Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us today, whether as a panelist or as someone coming to learn more information about the PhD summer internship program, which is now, I think, in its fourth year. It's a program that we are very grateful that the graduate school has been funding, where students, usually up to somewhere between 4 and 7, it varies year to year, PhD students are placed in really cool places like Partners in Health and Mary Christie Institute to do research and to build connections with non-academic organizations, to build skill sets ranging from survey data analysis to open-ended interviews to writing, right? Lei Ping had a lot of writing work and it was part of her internship last year. So welcome, and I'll kind of toss the invisible mic over to Nico, who's been working extraordinarily hard on this process. And if you want to say a couple of remarks, and then we'll open things up to our panelists, and then kind of Q&A. And after you speak, maybe everybody can go around and introduce themselves and let others know kind of what their role is or what they're hoping to learn today.
Thanks, Debbie. So hi, everyone. I'm Nico Casada. Some of you might have seen my name via email. I run a bunch of different fellowship programs for the graduate school, and I'm also running a postdoc program for the Dean's Office in the College of Arts and Sciences. And so I'm really excited to be here with you all today, especially for the social science internship program. To me, this is one of our more important opportunities that we have in the summer because it can open doors to future careers and help you transition from this current state of PhD life into whatever you're moving on to next. So this year, not a lot has changed about the program. We do have some sites that are returning, some sites that may have changed names. So for instance, the Mary Christie Institute no longer exists as an entity because they folded and become the Coalition for Transformational Education, but we still do have the same supervisors on board for that project, and we're excited to work with them again. You might notice some other familiar names like Partners in Health, the Center for Mind and Culture, and this year we have the BU School for Public Health also working with us. So all really wonderful sites. Some general quick facts. So eligibility for our program, you have to be a current PhD student, be in academic good standing, which means you're not on probation for anything. And you can't hold any additional BU supported summer teaching fellowships, internships, or any other sort of fellowship for summer 2024. So you might have heard the Bloom Fellowship be tossed around. That would be an example of this. This doesn't include anything that was given to you as part of your admissions package. And if you have any questions about that, I'll share my email in the chat and you're welcome to ask me and I can check in for you and make sure that you're eligible. And most importantly, you have to use social science methods in your research because it's a social science PhD internship. The stipend amount is $7,000. That's the summer 2024 rate, and it'll be paid out between May and August 2024. And then there's some tax information and payment structure information that you can check on the website, which I'll link for you all. That just goes into the nitty-gritty details there. But very excited to be here with you all, and I'm looking forward to hearing about what you want to get out of everything and why you're here today. So go ahead and pass it off if anybody wants to pick up the mic.
Great. I guess we'll bounce it to Shannon, who can talk a little bit, and then we'll bounce it to our panelists and potential interns.
So my name is Shannon Landis, and I am the administrator at CISS. So I work with Debbie on day-to-day administrative tasks and putting together meetings like this and that sort of thing. So while Nico is running this program, I'm always available to sort of back up and assist any needs that students have either prior to or after they are placed.
Great, thank you. And I realized I didn't introduce myself. I don't actually know everybody here. Hi, I'm Debbie Carr. I'm a sociology professor and the director of the Center for Innovation in Social Science. Great, so we will continue to pass the mic along, and then after you speak, feel free to choose someone else to pass it along to. So we'll start with Lei Ping Wang.
Yeah, thank you, Debbie. And also thank you, Nico, Shannon, for introducing the program. So hi, everyone. My name is Leping. So I'm currently a fourth-year doctoral student from the Department of Sociology. So I was involved in this program as an intern for the previous 2 years. So last year I was working with the Mary Christie Institute, which has been renamed, and I actually just figured out that recently that they changed their name. So last year when I was doing the internship, I was mostly involved in working on 2 articles that were uh, associated with the Learning Well magazine that they were launching at the time. And one article was about measuring well-being, and I was basically doing research and also harmonizing the different measurement skills for measuring well-being across different university and organization in the United States and also globally. And that was mostly a qualitative work. And then another article was about the experience of sex education in the US and in China. I was doing an interview and then with a couple of respondents, and then I was writing an article from a comparative lens on that. So there was a lot of writing work involved in that position. And for the previous year, back to 2022, I was working with Center for Mind and Culture, and that was mostly I was involved mostly in quantitative work. So my supervisor, who is a postdoc at the center at a time, we were working really closely on a research project related to how education attainment is associated with religious disaffiliation and religious decline in the United States. When I was thinking about just the comparison from the 2 different internship experience, that one was mostly because I was working really closely with my supervisor at a time, and it we were able to also expand our collaboration beyond the internship. So eventually that turned into a research paper that we co-authored, and that paper actually has recently been, so we submitted that back in January this year. So it was kind of a long stretch from 2022 to 2024. We submitted that to a journal this past January, and we just got an R&R recently from social science research, and we're still trying to revise that article. So I think in overall, when I think about the 2 experiences, I think it has been a really wonderful experience for me to still be able to pursue research work, but just in a different setting, in an industry setting rather than in an academic setting. But I am also able to have this comparative lens of how research work is conducted differently and what are the different audience that you're trying to speak to from academia and in comparison to industry. So it's a good exposure for me as I will be also on the market next year. So it's a good exposure for me to kind of have a preview in terms of when I want to pursue a research position and how it looks differently in industry, in a nonprofit organization in comparison to in academia. So I'm open to also if any of the potential candidates would want to learn more about the 2 different sides and about my experience. I'm happy to share my experience.
Great, thank you. Who would like to go next? Joanna, I know you didn't want to do a panelist. Do you want to speak a little bit about your experience?
Sure. Yeah, so hi everyone, I'm Chawanuch. Can everyone hear me?
Good.
Yeah, perfect. So I'm not really here as a panel, but I can answer any questions. If anyone has any questions. I actually did this program 2 years ago, so last year I didn't join, but I was working for REICI, which was the Prisoners Legal Service of Massachusetts, and they had run a survey study for BIPOC people in Massachusetts who were incarcerated. And so they had actually mailed out paper surveys for prisoners to write back and answer questions on programming, access to medical and mental health services, discipline, visitation rights, religious and cultural freedom, these things. And so over the summer, we had to coordinate and enter those surveys into Qualtrics because all of these surveys were handwritten, and there wasn't a way to analyze the data with everything kind of being mailed in written form. So I helped kind of gather interns who were undergrad students that wanted to participate in the program, and basically just instructed them on how to enter surveys into Qualtrics, and then also took part in the meetings with other professors who were also involved in this project. And I was given an advisor, I think her name was Heather, in the Soc department at BU. So that was great to have one specific mentor to talk to. So basically more of a coordination role. And also at the end of the summer, we started doing descriptive statistics of what we found. And then we began to writing reports on the findings, but that was kind of the end of the summer and where things stopped. But overall it was really enriching, and I had a great time. So can talk to that experience if anyone is interested. I'm not sure if this is still available this year.
Unfortunately, Reiki is not returning this year, but your experience is still, I think, really helpful to share with everyone, how balancing out your research over the summer and doing this internship worked out, even your placement, like how well did that gel, etc.
Okay, that's perfect. Yeah, happy to help in any way.
Oh,
Yeah.
great. Thank you. And it shows also there's such diversity. I think that's something we always marvel at, that, and this is something we can talk about later, that you have to write these kind of little statements about which site you're most excited about, and lots of different, criteria for matching, including not only the skills you bring, but the skills you're hoping to acquire. So great. Thank you for that. So next up, Martin.
Hey everyone. I'm sorry I don't have video today. My internet is pretty bad here. But I am a PhD student in anthropology. I'm in my 4th year and currently finishing up my my fieldwork abroad in the Gambia, and my research focuses on kind of like global trade and food systems. And I'm really excited to I'm looking into a lot of different internship opportunities for this summer to kind of grow my existing research skill set and find ways to apply that in like non-academic environments. I'm especially excited to learn more about like grant writing and management, kind of mixed methods and quantitative research, and just kind of working in a nonprofit or governmental or private sector area. Yeah. Thank you all for coming on today.
Great, thank you. And feel free once Rachel makes some remarks to kind of pose specific questions to any of the panelists here, and we'll do the best we can in answering those questions. Great. So next up, Rachel.
Yeah, I'm Rachel. I'm a PhD candidate in the history department, and I specialize in 17th and 18th century British intellectual history and the history of emotions. Nico is pretty familiar with my project at this point, having seen some grant applications of mine. Thanks for your help with that, by the way. I did an internship with Partners in Health, PIH, 2 years ago now. And it was a bit of, I'd say, kind of an experiment on my part and on their part because of what my particular skill set is. I'm not like a typical social scientist. I have a background in environmental policy though. And so there were ways that I could take the skill set that I have as a historian and my previous skill set and use them to the benefit of PIH. So what I ended up doing was writing this report that was for internal distribution within the organization, looking at the historic language usage of organizations like the Gates Foundation, like USAID, like the World Health Organization, things like that, looking at how they use language around community health volunteers, starting around in the 1970s and working up to the present day. So I did an entire kind of analysis and comparison of these different organizations and the way that they discuss this particular population and how organizations like PAH might develop strategies for holding these philanthropic government organizations to account for the promises that they make over time, and how these promises kind of get re-upped in these very interesting cycles. And that while some of the words might be new from year to year, decade to decade, a lot of the promises that are being made are the same and are not being fulfilled. And so being able to look at the historical trends was something that the people I was working with at PAH found to be really useful information. It was a great experience, honestly. It was hard because it was like, I don't know, I wrote probably 20 to 30,000 words for this. But it was a really great experience because I got to demonstrate the way that historians have skills that are really useful outside of the kind of like box of the professor, and outside of the box of like teaching undergrads. So that was something that was really enjoyable, even if it was a lot of work.
All right, there we go. Great, thank you. And that's kind of a really great example about, bringing skills that maybe are different than they're used to working with, but really recognizing kind of the tremendous value of what you do. And I think that's something that we hope everybody will get out of these internships. Is sometimes academics sometimes downplay what their skill sets are, but then when you go out to these other type of venues, you realize the writing, the analysis, the thinking, all of these things we kind of take for granted are tremendously valuable, right, in nonprofit and not other types of non-academic settings. Great. So yeah, it's really cool to hear what you all have done. And I guess it sounds like we really only have one kind of applicant here, although any of you who have been in the program before are more than welcome and in fact encouraged to apply this summer, because the sites are all very different and the skill sets are different. So I guess I'll just leave it at that and then kind of open the floor for questions or conversations, or Nico may have more specifics that he can share with anybody who might be a return member of our program.
I'm going to go ahead and also post the links in the email for questions right now, because I realized I didn't do that after I finished speaking. So you can see that in the chat. So that page I'm linking to is the general GRS fellowship site, and there's tabs that you click on, they expand. That's where everything is listed throughout the year in case you have never seen it before. But this opportunity can be found under summer funding. And you notice there's a couple of other different opportunities that GRS offers as well.
Okay, I didn't realize I was the only participant today, but I can throw some questions out there. So I guess one of the concerns, or not concerns, but just kind of like anxieties I have about the internship and hiring process is just making that transition from academic life and teaching and researching and these much more like amorphous timelines that a lot of grad students work on into I guess a very different institutional structure. So I was just curious if y'all could talk about like how you found that transition into the kind of workplace culture of wherever you did your internship, and how you navigated that. And yeah.
I can start.
Please, thank you.
I didn't have to navigate it really because I worked from home. So it depends on what you land in, what your role is. There was no need for me to go into an office or anything like that. PIH is based here in Boston. And like I met and hung out with some of the people, but like there was nothing about my work that required me to go be in an office environment. It wouldn't have helped. In fact, it probably would have hindered the way that I work. So that it was honestly like there was not really much of a transition in that regard. And so whatever sort of rhythms make sense for your day-to-day kind of research and writing, there's no reason that you can't apply them to your internship work as well. It's just about kind of shifting what your focus is.
Yeah, I can go next. I think I had a similar experience. So I also worked from home, and like I said, a lot of my role was coordinating with undergrads and like teaching them how to code surveys into a system. So after kind of that initial meeting, I was pretty much given my own like timeline to set. I like coordinated with my kind of even my interns, I guess. But there wasn't like a set structure. And they were also very accommodating with my schedule. So like every time they'd be like, when to meet with trying to schedule like a meeting time for the whole organization to come together. But there wasn't really, it didn't feel like a strict job that I felt like I was having to go into an office, or that there was a set timeline for anything.
Yeah. So I think in my case, from last year when I was working with Mary Christie Institute, I was working from home, but we do also have a couple of meetings for the general meeting because the team is really small. So for the general meeting that involves all members of the team, we had a couple of meetings that were in person, and we also had a couple of just team gathering, like team building time together when we met at the center director's house. So I think in terms of I think one thing I want to share is like what I found to be different in terms of how the work norms, how the cultural norms within the organization is, and also how what they expect to be the delivery is a kind of different from what we do as academics. So I think because they're a really policy oriented organization, and they want really like quick delivery, especially when it comes to writing pieces. They want really concise, direct, and straightforward, and also quick messages that can be understood by the general audience, and that can be directly informing some policy changes. So I think what I did to get myself better prepared throughout the process is because I was actually working mostly closely with one of the main director and also another coworker. But what I did is I tried to actually join every meeting, even if it is not something that is directly related to what I was working on within the team, just to also expose myself better to the norm and also the culture and just the general agenda of the team at that time. And then when it comes to actual writing, I think because I was asking the director to also send me a couple of samples that she wrote at the beginning as the story and that were eventually published in the online magazine, so that I could also have some exposure in terms of the writing style, how it is different for writing towards the general audience in comparison to writing towards field specialists. And that really helped. And also in terms of the editing process, I was working really closely with the director who is also the editor-in-chief for the online magazine, and she was able to provide really detailed in-text edits for me, and that helped me a lot in terms of also changing my writing style, changing the way that I was used to like using jargons that speaks only to the field experts rather than speaking to a general audience. Yeah. And in terms of the year in 2022, at that time for that summer, I did go into the office. I go into the office pretty much for 2 days out of the week. And because I was working really closely with my supervisor at the time, I was sitting at a desk next to her. So we were able to kind of, I think that definitely held me accountable to also working like being really like detail oriented towards work. And I think the organizational culture for that center, for the Center for Mind and Culture specifically, I think because it's actually really research oriented, so it doesn't feel as much different in comparison to our day-to-day work, in comparison to the organization that I was working with from last year. But I think essentially my takeaway is regardless of whether the organization that you're interested in, regardless of how disparate it is from from academia, I think what helps me to navigate between different organizational norm and also disciplinary norm is to try to communicate really frequently with the team and also with my supervisor during our internship, and also to I think, oh, at a time I also reached out. I also Debbie also helped me in terms of Debbie shared a couple of writing sample in which she was writing towards the general audience, which really helped. I think yeah, communicating frequently and also seeking for help, seeking for advice, that definitely really helped. Yeah.
And this actually reminded me of two other points I wanted to make. One is that don't be afraid, if you do get placed, to reach out to me, because I'm here to be a resource for you. So if you have questions about workplace culture, if you're trying to navigate a tough situation with your supervisor, like that's why I'm here. And the second piece is that we've been working with PDPA, is it Professional Development and Postdoctoral Affairs, and they've come up with a cohort system that for this summer for all PhD students that are in BU-supported summer internships. And that's just going to be another way for you to have peers to rely on. If you're going through something and you'd rather talk about it with a peer that's maybe living in a similar situation, it'll be another touch point for you.
Great. Thank you. Oh, and I see we have another person that joined maybe recently, Ziki. Oh, okay. Great. Great. So I guess we'll continue to see if others have questions or thoughts for one another. Other questions that we can answer of prospective interns or past interns who are hoping to stay with the program.
Well, it might be it might be helpful to Martin if we know which programs you're interested in, so that we could then ask, like, we could answer specifics about them or tell you about our own experiences with those organizations. Not to single you out, but
Oh yeah, sorry. I actually just saw this email about an hour ago, so I haven't had the chance to look over the perspective things, but I can skim it really quick and get back to you on that. But I guess in the meantime, I have another question, more about like the kind of like long-term relationship that y'all have had with these placements. Like if there were opportunities for if your supervisor or the program like invited you to like stay on or to like stay in touch about future work opportunities with the company, or what that looks like for each of you. And I will very quickly look over those to answer your question.
I mean, the short answer for me is no. But I think that's in part because, again, like I said at the outset, what I was doing was sort of an experiment. And so I know that they valued the work that I was able to do, but it was such a specific kind of thing that it was difficult. It would require creating an entire new kind of position in the future when I would like potentially not be a graduate student or anything like that, or if I was not going to be teaching, which I teach during the summer now, and so then that means I can't do an internship, which is really unfortunate. because I would have liked to have been able to kind of continue the work with PIH, but because of the way that BU, the rules are about the kind of work that you can do or not do outside of the confines of your program and your fellowship, that meant that I couldn't continue doing the work. Whether there is potential in the future after I'm no longer at BU to go work with PIH and do more of the kind of work that I was doing for them, I don't know. I think that would be really interesting and really fulfilling in a lot of different ways, because I was quite passionate about the research I was doing for them, and I think that they really valued it. So it's difficult depending on the kinds of things that you want to be doing with your summers. If you're interested in teaching or doing other kinds of research, it limits your ability to do more with the internship.
Yeah, I can share. So in my case, I think a more general answer to that question is I think it depends on what kind of work that you're doing during the internship. So if it is, for example, if it is you jump in an organization, you jump in a project that the organization has been doing for a while, then usually the case, especially if you're doing some data analysis or like writing work for them for a for a project in progress at a time, I think that there are opportunities for you to be able to continue working with them after that, but the chances they're also be able to like hire more people or recruit more intern after your internship concludes. But if it is the case that you're working really closely with like one or two person within the organization on a project that you initiate together, I think the chances usually you will be able to carry that on even after the internship concludes as a collaborative project. So in my case from last year, because essentially the center's project are really focused on religiosity, but they're communicated and they're trying to also find a project and to communicate with me to find a project that would align with both the interest of the center, but also with my research interest. So the project that we work on during the internship is actually something that we initiated together rather than a project that has been ongoing for a while. So we were able to carry the project on even after the internship, and we basically collaborated on a research paper together that we are still working on together right now. So, and I think usually the centers, from my experience, the people are really communicative, and you can definitely figure out a way, especially if during the experience you feel like you're really passionate about the organization and your mission align, and you still wanted to continue the relationship. I think there are definitely a lot of opportunity for that. Especially after communicating with the team that you're working on.
Yeah, for me, there was definitely an opportunity to continue. But what I struggled with was since it was a lot of different universities with each of their small student teams and professors who were all working on this larger project. So we wanted to do like a final paper write-up of what the survey results showed. It was really difficult to coordinate between kind of the different schools. So we would have like maybe once every other week meetings, and people would come, and it was hard to just keep that momentum going because we were just like a small part of a larger project. So I was offered by like REICI to keep continuing on and writing, and if I wanted, but I think why I ended up stopping during the school year was it was just so hard to get everyone on like the same page, and the coordination is really difficult. And kind of like the opportunity is there if you wanted, but they didn't really have a set structure or role for me beyond the internship, which was why I decided to not continue. But I'm sure that like if I had taken more initiative or if I really felt like I wanted to lead the whole project, between the different universities, I could have taken that role. But it was just too much with my PhD obligations and things like that on top.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that information. To answer your question, Rachel, I think the ones I would be the most interested in would be the Center for Mind and Culture or the Coalition for Transformational Education.
Those
Okay.
ones that Lei Ping served at. Yes.
Right, yeah, I was working with both organizations. So do you have any like specific questions that you want to learn more about regarding those two sites?
So okay, you mentioned most of your work was just kind of survey research and data entry related to survey research, right?
So that is mostly my experience when I was working with Center for Mind and Culture, and my experience with the Coalition for, is it Coalition for Transformational Education, something like that? Yeah, that was mostly qualitative writing work. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm just curious how you liked working with the organizations, or like your what your relationship with your supervisor was like, or how you felt that your skills um as a researcher and PhD student and teacher kind of fit into um the organization's missions.
Mhm. Yeah, so my experience with Center for Mind and Culture, because I do quantitative skills and statistical skill can be applied to my research project at a time. And in terms of my relationship, so because it was a really small team and I was working really closely with one person who is a postdoc. Her name is Rachel Bacon at a center. And yeah, actually, I would say 95% of my work was just me directly working with her rather than working with the bigger team. So it feels more like a collaboration rather than I feel like I am an intern working in an organization. So that I would say the characteristic of that internship feels actually really close to academic collaboration, I would say. And in terms of working with the Coalition for Transformational Education, so the team is still really small. It is mostly 4 to 5 people ish, and the characteristic of that organization feels more like a nonprofit, and they're really policy relevant and oriented. And also, I think the writing style for that organization feels more like a journalism style rather than an academic style. It feels like the kind of style that you would see from the conversation. So, my relationship with how did I navigate the relationship with the team at the time was because I was working mostly from home, but I think we met for like around 3 to 4 times throughout the internship in person. And I think the whole team was really welcoming. Yeah, actually, the whole team was really warm. And I think people care about each other outside of work. And I really like the kind of culture the team has at the time, and they're also super supportive because at the beginning I was not really sure, like in terms of how to write a kind of journalism piece and how to signal those kind of message that are really policy oriented. But they were able to like provide example and also to navigate me through the writing process, which was really helpful.
That's really cool. Yeah, thank you for sharing. Those both sound super interesting.
Great. Great. Any other questions or thoughts that folks would like to share? Anything? If not, I guess one thing that would be helpful if past interns, feel free to kind of talk up the program or share with classmates. We know that people get an awful lot of email, and we want to make sure that this one kind of doesn't get lost in the shuffle. And the call, as you can see, is in the chat right here, but also it's up on the CISS webpage, at the GRS site. The deadline isn't for about 2.5 weeks yet, so there's a little bit of time. And so we appreciate your help, not only in participating in speaking today, but in helping to spread the word.
And if you have any issues with the InfraReady portal, please let me know sooner than later. I know InfraReady is a new thing this year that we're transitioning slowly all of our programs to just collect applications in one place. So hopefully you'll start to see it more and get used to using it. But if you have any issues, please let me know.
Thank you. So, does anybody have any further thoughts they'd like to share or questions they'd like to pose? Well, just one thing I'll mention in response to Martin's earlier question. We did have an intern, I think the first or second year, who ended up working for the organization, and I cannot remember their name, but it was someone who was maybe from emerging media studies, right? From communication, someone who did very qualitative research. I've been kind of looking around trying to find the name of the organization, which I can't remember. So it definitely is possible. But again, it has to be a perfect storm of both the intern graduating at the moment that the site needs the person to work there full time.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. I really appreciate all the information.
Well, thanks to all of you. And if anybody has questions or thoughts they'd like to share after we get off our Zoom today, feel free to email Nico or me or Shannon or any of the panelists, and we'll try to make sure that all those questions get answered.
Thank you everyone for your help today. It was great to put names to faces, and I hope that you'll apply.
Definitely. Great. And thank you, Nico, for all the heavy lifting you're doing. And thank you, Shannon, for organizing our session today.